Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video it's going to be a bit of an update video, but also a bit of a planting video. Basically I've got some hostas at my parents' house here. They need dividing and they'll be quite good for when this becomes a woodland garden. So I'm going to be planting them into this site. But first of all I'd like to give you guys an update on the tree rings here that I put around the trees to kill off the grass. Now they've not been 100% successful unfortunately. I think the problem is I didn't put enough cardboard down. The cardboard rotted faster than I expected and so the grass is starting to come through in a couple of places. It depends on the tree rings. Some of them are fine. So this one for example looks absolutely fine. There's no sign of grass coming up at all. I think because the mulch was actually slightly thicker here. So if I rake it away, you can see there's a little bit of cardboard there. There's one or two tiny grass shoots trying to come up, but nothing has actually reached the surface yet. So as long as we keep that well mulched, that grass might actually run out of energy and die before it reaches the surface. However, on this one over here, either it was the mulch wasn't thick enough or the cardboard wasn't thick enough. We have actually got a few pieces of grass starting to grow through. Most of it though, there isn't much grass. There is a tiny bit underneath the surface. You can see most of it's actually died. There's lots of worms and other things starting to rot it down now. And this is becoming a nice compost layer, but because the cardboard has rotted so quickly, it is a little bit of an issue. What I might need to do is in spring, once the spring flowers are finished, because there's a lot of spring bulbs coming up. You can see over here several coming up, and also the crocuses are looking really good at the moment. They were looking slightly better this morning when the sun was out, but they're still mostly open this afternoon. And there's several other spring bulbs to come up, but the crocuses and the snowdrops are the earliest ones, so they're the only ones on show at the moment, but there'll be a few more coming up as spring goes on. So what I might need to do is, once the spring bulbs are finished, rake off this this mulch, put another layer of cardboard down, maybe 2 layers of cardboard, and then mulch it again. The grass will be quite weak now. It's putting a lot of energy into trying to grow through the cardboard, hasn't had any daylight for months, so it's actually quite weak. It shouldn't be hard to kill off, but we will need to do something, otherwise this grass is going to be a bit of an issue as time goes on. But at least it's mostly killed off. And then that one over there, we'd actually cleared that of grass previously, so there's not really any grass coming up in there, just spring bulbs. So that's basically the update for the tree rings. Moderate success. The only thing I'd do differently this time I think is a thicker mulch. So we'll see if we get some more mulch as the season goes on. I might be able to just smother those young shoots of grass that are coming up just with an extra thick layer of mulch. Otherwise what I'll do is I'll rake away the mulch, put down 2 or 3 layers of cardboard and then mulch on top of that, and that should kill off the grass as it tries to come through in springtime. So these are the 3 hosta plants at my parents'. It doesn't look like much at the moment, but these plants have massive leaves for the size of roots, so this whole area is completely covered in summer. I'll actually show you a photo now of what this looks like last summer, and you'll see the whole place is just absolutely full of leaves, and they really need dividing because they're just choking themselves out. So there's 3 plants here in total. The one in the middle is actually quite small, so I'm probably just going to leave that one completely undivided. There's not much to see at the moment. Hostas are actually some of the later plants to come up here in Scotland. They normally come up kind of early May, end of April. They just sit there as nothing, and then once they do come up, they come up really fast. So within 2 weeks of the buds appearing, they're almost in full leaf. So once these do come up, they'll be fast. But the good thing with them being so late is a lot of the spring bulbs that we're using at the moment are quite early, and so I can actually plant around these with things like snowdrops and crocuses, and that will actually allow us to have all the crocuses growing around here. The crocuses will be finished flowering, and even the leaves might be starting to die back by the time that these hostas actually start to grow. So the biggest clump is this one here. I'm actually going to split this into 4 sections. The 4 sections, I'm going to take 3 of them to the woodland area, and the other one I'll just leave in the space here just to grow and get larger. And then we've got one over here as well, which is a bit bigger. This one I'm just going to split in half and take one section out and leave the other section. So there'll be 4 pieces of hosta that I'll take out and put in the woodland section. There'll be 3 sections of hosta left here, but much smaller. Even though they're much smaller, it'll probably still cover most of this area because the hostas are really quite strong plants, and once the leaves come out they just kind of smother everything, especially this variety. There's different varieties of hostas, some of them very small leaves, some of them big leaves. This is a giant leaf hosta, so it really does just smother everything. So when it comes to planting the hostas, this isn't a perfect site yet. You can see there's not a lot of shade. There will be shade later on in a few years time, but at the moment it's not really a woodland setting for them. But I want to get them planted now just to help smother out some of the grass, and the plant needs dividing anyway, so it's a good time to do it. And I need to get it done in winter. You can divide them in summer, but they really don't do as well. You have to keep them well watered. Whereas if I divide them now, they'll establish their roots as they grow their leaves, and they won't need any watering throughout the summer. It's not the ideal conditions. The grass will probably outcompete them a little bit for the next year or 2. The hostas probably won't get a lot bigger, They should smother out the grass right around them, but they'll be competing with the roots, so they're going to struggle a little bit to really get going. But then after a couple of years, these trees should have grown a lot more. We should get a nice bit of shade starting here. We're also putting an extra tree in around about this area, probably later this spring, and that's really going to help with shading this in 2 or 3 years time. Once this becomes more of a woodland environment, then the hostas will easily grow really well and outcompete the grass without any problems. So there's a couple of places I'm going to plant them. I'm probably going to plant one here, a second one over there. I'm going to put a third one around about that spot, and then a fourth one around here. Now the last couple of years, you can see the line where we've cut it. The yellow grass is where we've been weakening the grass. The grass on the left here has just been treated like a lawn, so it's a bit healthier. We are expanding this slightly, so let's say there's going to be a tree around about here, and the line is going to be, instead of being along here, the line is going to be from here down to this section. We're just slightly widening it so we can get a bit more shade and a few more plants planted in there, because at the moment it's quite narrow for a woodland garden. If you have it too narrow, you're not going to get enough shade in there. So a few extra trees and a bit wider, and we should get a bit darker and shadier. This section, although we haven't been cutting this like a woodland meadow, because we walk here to the compost, this is also a very shady spot. I'm going to be planting a couple of other plants in this video today. So I'm also going to be planting some Oxalis triangularis. So this is a purple leaf shamrock. These are the tubers actually. It was from another video that I've done recently where I had a house plant that I divided, and there was just loads of extra tubers that I didn't need. I'll show you a picture now of what the plant looks like. It's got lovely purple leaves, and although it's normally grown as a house plant, it should actually do okay here in this part of the world, because they don't get very hard frosts here near the coast where my parents' garden is, and certainly the ground underneath shouldn't freeze, so they should actually survive even though they're not technically winter hardy. So as you can see, quite stunning purple leaves, and they also have some small pink flowers. I'm just going to scatter these kind of randomly throughout the whole plot, and also a few more here. They are naturally woodland plants. They can handle shade really well. I suspect they'll struggle to compete with the grass for a little bit. They won't die because of the grass, but they just won't really proliferate and spread very much. But then once we get the shade, like the hostas, they'll struggle for a couple of years, and then they should really come into their own. But because they're woodland plants and they're used to competing with tree roots and things, I don't think they're going to suffer too much with the grass. It'll just be the first couple of years that they'll suffer until we get some decent shade coverage. So the way I'm going to be planting these is I'm actually going to be using an auger. So this is basically just like a spiral auger. You can get these, I'll actually put a link on Amazon in case you're interested in these, an Amazon affiliate link. I'm not being paid to promote this product, but I might get paid a small amount of revenue if you do purchase it through the link that I put. And this is basically just like a spiral that you put into an electric drill. So I've got my electric drill here, and it just makes making holes an awful lot easier. So I did one there as a test. I'll do another one here, and this is just a very quick, easy way if you want to plant bulbs. This is a small one. That you do get slightly larger ones as well. I'll just show you how quick and easily you can create holes in your garden soil. And this is turf. Normally I would just use a trowel or a bulb planter, but because this is quite thick turf and it's got a lot of fat and grass roots, it's quite hard to dig through with a trowel. So this makes the job an awful lot easier. So you can see there, it quite easily makes a little hole, and I can just pop the bulbs in there or any tubers, and it just makes it a lot faster. So when it comes to splitting hostas, it's actually quite an easy task. You just need to basically get a flat spade. Don't get a curved spade or a shovel, it's a bit harder to cut in a straight line. And you just want to go right through. Make sure you're wearing sturdy boots or something like that, because it's going to be quite tough. You need to hit quite hard on the spade. And you're just going to cut it into slices, just vertically basically. That's all you need to do. As I say, they are quite tough. They've got big, thick, succulent roots. They're not woody, so a spade should be able to slice through it, no problem. But there is a bit of firmity to it, so it's a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to quarter this one, and I'll leave 1/4 here, and the rest I'll be planting out. So that's me now quartered it. I just need to go around the edge to make sure I can loosen it and dig it out. And you'll find with hostas, they tend to just be a massive collection of roots basically. So I'll try and pop out 1/4 here. They don't have a bulb or a tuber as such, but it tends to be just kind of large fleshy roots. And you want to go quite deep. They are quite deeply rooted quite often. So you can see there, you've got like the main kind of rhizomy rooty bit, and you've got all these fleshy roots coming off it. That's the most important section, these kind of fat kind of rhizomy bits at the top, but you also want to make sure you get plenty of that fleshy root as well. So I'm just going to dig out these quarters leave one in there, and the rest I'm just going to plant in the woodland garden. And when it does come to digging them up, it depends on the time of year. If you're doing it in winter, it's dormant, you don't have to worry too much. That's why I'm doing it now before they start to grow. But these shoots are very delicate. You don't want to snap off any of these shoots. It really weakens the plant. They put a lot of their energy into these shoots ready for growth into next year. So it's the top you really want to be careful with. The side roots, some of them might get rotten infection, but it's not something you really need to worry about normally. They're strong, vigorous plant hostas, and they'll come back no problem. So that's now all planted up. There's not a lot to see because all the plants are dormant. Now if you are using the auger tool, there's a couple of things I would say. If you're using a small one and it's sandy soil, it's very easy to use. With a powerful drill, you do have to make sure it's a fairly powerful drill. I had my torque setting up to the highest, and it was still going slightly on the torque setting, so you need something with a very high torque. If you're using the larger ones, just watch your wrists, especially if you hit any stones, because it can really twist your wrists, so make sure you're just aware of that if you are using the auger. So as I say, these are the 4 hostas here planted out. Now I've tried to plant them slightly lower than the grass height. The reason for that is the hostas tend to grow into a bit of a mound over time, and they'll become higher than the grass. I want them level or lower than the grass. The reason being, I'm going to cut this once a year with a lawnmower, and although I have that lawnmower in a high setting, I really don't want to cut off any of the buds or cut into the rhizomes at all, and as it grows up into a mound, there's a risk of that happening. So I've just planted them a little bit lower than the grass level, just to try and compensate for that. So when I go over this with a lawnmower at the end of the year to cut back all the growth, that shouldn't be a problem. I've also not added any feed or compost to this because I don't want the grass to get too strong. I want the grass to stay weak so that the other plants can outcompete it, especially as there's still a lot of sunlight coming in. But if you were to plant hostas yourself, make sure you put a lot of compost and feed in. It will just give you bigger, stronger leaves. And also the main thing about hostas is give them shade and plenty of water. If they don't have enough water, they'll really suffer. If they're in direct sunshine, they can survive, but you really need to make sure they have plenty of water because they just won't do as well. They probably won't die, but they'll just grow quite slowly and look a bit pale. So that's all for this update. I'll see you guys hopefully in a few months' time when the trees are coming into leaf, maybe even some flowers in the leaves, because these are all fruit trees, so they do flower quite nicely in spring. And we'll see how the hostas come up and see how the oxalis does as well. There's not going to be a huge amount of plants put in here. This is a slow process with this garden. Eventually it will become a nice woodland garden with lots of flowers from the middle of winter right through to the end of summer. But for now, it's just a work in progress. And hopefully this next autumn I'll plant a lot more spring bulbs, and so we can increase this display further.